Yeah. Oh, so you actually have a shaman you're talking to.
Yeah, my friend Teo Alfaro, he owns a wolf sanctuary.
Oh, wow. That's
And
cool.
he's been my teacher for a long time. Really cool guy. And he now has like 40 some odd wolves that he pairs with at-risk youth.
Hmm.
Like he brings kids in who are just closed and won't talk and have been damaged. And they meet these wolves who have been damaged and they open up,
Yeah.
and he has programs there. So we're talking later.
I don't know, but that sounds like how werewolves are made. Is that how werewolves are made? I'm just kidding.
No, but you should go out there because you're in California.
I am. Where's he at? Where exactly?
He's like an hour and a half due east of Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. I'm north. I'm in San Francisco Bay Area. I'm probably like a good
Oh yeah, you are.
hours.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's right.
that's good. That's nice. California's a weird state, man. It's like, oh, I live in California. Oh, you're nearby. Yeah, like 9 hours away.
Dude, my son got stranded at JFK last night.
Oh,
Night before last. He
yeah.
came in from Israel and Russia, and he just called me. He says, "Dad, please pick me up. I missed my flight." I
Oh,
fucking
man.
got in the car at 11 o'clock at night, drove to New York from Washington,
Oh,
D.C., picked him up
geez.
and drove him home because that's what a fucking dad does.
That's what a dad does, dude. Is that like, it's like a 3 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour drive, isn't it?
It was a 4-hour drive. Thank you very much.
I remember lived over there. I played for the Redskins, so I remember I
know.
drove at one point from. Well, we weren't in DC. We were actually in Virginia. So I
I
think
live
it
in
was like,
Virginia. I live in
yeah.
Tyson's Corner.
Okay, cool. We lived in
Yeah.
Ashburn, Virginia.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hope your time with the Redskins was better than our time with the Redskins.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Probably not very much. It was just like short-lived and lives. It was great. It's NFL, man. That's what you do. You just go through stuff and they're like, hey, we don't care about you, but hey, we might pay you.
Cool. All right, man. Let me do our introduction and we'll go from there.
Let's do it, bro. Let's have some fun.
All right, man. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. I am your host, Mark Silverman. Today, I get to speak to Anthony Trucks. He's a former NFL player. He's a best-selling author. Currently, he's an American Ninja Warrior, which I think is the coolest thing ever. He's a husband and a father, and he's the founder of Identity Shift, where he works with people to help them transition in life. And we know that this podcast is about moving on to the next chapters, to evolving and growing your life. So Anthony's a perfect guest for our podcast. Anthony, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's actually interesting. I find that you are correct. More people care about the Ninja Warrior stuff now than they've ever cared about the NFL. It's super funny, but yeah. I
have to admit, I don't tune it in, but when it's on, I am riveted and I fall in love with every single athlete because you can see what they did to get there.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to ask you, why did you do American Ninja Warrior?
My wife, it was like a cruel joke that was not a joke. She like filled this application out online and she had the 80% of it done. It's like, hey, apparently you need a video and I can't fake a video for you. So I need you to do this video for the show. And I thought it was a show called Wipeout. I was like, I don't want to go on these things and like get like, balls thrown at me and fall off and splash and have some weird dudes making. But anyway, so I filled it out. I was like, oh, it's this Ninja Warrior show. Never really watched it. And then sure enough, they called me. I think it was partially the story and then partially like the NFL stuff. And I don't know, a lot of the guys that are on there, these, short little black guys or short little white guys, and I'm not a short little white guy. So like it fits all the little dynamics. So it worked out, man. I went on. I'm now the first former NFL athlete to hit a buzzer. I've actually completed my third season now. And I've always made it from the city qualifiers, the city finals. Haven't got to Vegas yet, but it's a cool little thing, man. It's a great.
Yeah, my brother is now I know my brother's going to love listening to this podcast because he's a complete addict to watching American Ninja Warrior and knows all the stories. So that's cool. So Identity Shift really intrigued me because you talk at a very good level about what's needed in order to create your life and create the next chapter. Can you just tell me about Identity Shift, like the definition and what it means to you?
Yeah. Well, I guess the biggest part of it, the root of where it came from for me was one, like I'm a spiritual dude in the sense I have faith, but I'm not like a spiritual, I light incense and sit in Indian style on the ground and hum. Like it's not me. I'm a former NFL guy, right? But at the same time, there's a part of us as a cognitive spiritual aspect. So Identity Shift, it's a mental aspect, but it's not a super high spiritual thing. Here's the truth of it though, what I found throughout my life, which I'll tell more of my story. I've had to navigate a lot of different transitions, we'll call them. And people call transitions these things that are like really difficult to run into, to navigate and get through. So identity shift really is, it's the root of who you are, what programming that runs your brain that allows you to operate as you operate on autopilot. And if your identity is in place, you're great. You can create whatever you want to create if it's the right ideal identity for that specific goal. But if it's not in place, you're just going to keep running that programming and end up at the end every single time falling short, because the programming it takes you to a place which you're already at, which is usually where you don't want to be. The best way to put it into like a metaphorical concept is, in life, a lot of us we're putting a lot of effort into something, a lot of energy, a lot of focus, and we just can't seem to get going. And it's kind of like a car that has a stick shift. When you're in first gear, like, you can press that gas, you'll get going to a certain speed. And at a certain point in first gear, like, the engine's revved up, you're running out of gas. The engine could explode because it's really redlined. And so as human beings, a lot of us are redlined. We're given a ton of energy. We're running out of gas. We're frustrated about to explode because we can't break through. But in a car, if you shift to second gear, the engine slows down speed-wise, the gas gets conserved, but the car accelerates. And so an identity shift really is that shift to that higher gear of who you're supposed to be for that direct area of life you want to go in. And in doing so, that you can calm down, you can actually give less energy, but on almost autopilot, the same like willpower you're giving now, but the car accelerates, life accelerates. And so for me, I teach people the psychology and the physiology and actions of how to make that take place in life.
So what, from what you're just saying, that was a brilliant analogy, and I love that, and I'm going to steal it every chance I get.
Take it, baby, take it.
Is that our ability to move through the stages of life is our ability to let go of the identity that we had and embrace the identity that looks like what we need for the next chapter, whether it's a chapter that's kind of forced on us by life or one of our choosing and where we want to go.
Yeah, it always happens by force or by choice. Like, I have a podcast called Aw Shift, because there's aw shift moments in life. And the shift takes place against our will or with our will. And it's always a matter of like, oh, shift, this is awesome. Now what? Or, oh, shift, this sucks. Now what, right? So if you get to those two situations, realize that they shape our life. You can be a victim, which is, oh, shift, this sucks. And it can happen to you, where you can say, I'm going to go after something great. And then, oh, shift, is amazing. I'm going to figure this thing out. And so that's really kind of the direction of how I look at this identity shift, is it truly is something that happens to us or for us through actions and, experiences in the world. But the identity of who you are is, it's that thing you'd kind of do on autopilot. It's like you said, perfect example, my man. So you said, my son got into JFK last night and his flight was delayed. I had to go drive 4 hours to pick him up, because that's what a good dad does. And so I now know part of your identity, and just that simple statement, is that you are a solid dad and you identify as that. Therefore, your ego will protect that identity with your actions. And your action was, I'm a good dad. A good dad does this. Even if it's the middle of the night, I don't want to do it. My ego won't allow me to not go pick him up, because that's what the action of a good dad does. So you protect that identity. And that's what we all do. The problem is most people have no idea what their identity is. And the identity you have isn't the one for the goal you want in life. Therefore, the ego's actions, they keep you in a box opposed to protecting a great identity you want.
Great. So I'm going to keep going, even though you just choked me up. That was awesome. So tell me about your origin story. Why do you care about any of this?
Yeah, man, there's a lot to it. I grew up in a crappy place. Then I was given away into foster care at 3. So I started out life having no clue who I was, because I really wasn't this guy that was even loved by his mom. I had nobody that gave me a sense of stability, if you want to call it that. And I really got treated like garbage to the different homes I was in. I was beaten, starved, tortured, like over a 3-year period, just from 3 to 6 years old. And so I didn't know who I was. And I landed in this home. It's my home now, and it's my family. But the unique thing is I'm the only Black person in an all-white family. So there's some fun dynamics and jokes in our household. But then from 6 till about 14, we were really poor. Like, I was a super, like, I make a dumb joke that I grew up poor white trash, because we were just really poor. And it was kind of this thing where we had to navigate like life and figuring things out, with me not being adopted, still a foster kid, and me, like, who am I, this Black kid in all white family? And eventually got adopted at 14. So I got to, for the first time, play football, which was now, okay, I'm an athlete now for the first time. And then I met my high school sweetheart, ended up getting a college football scholarship to go to Oregon after being horrible at the game of football, but navigated that. Had a son at 20 years old in college with my high school sweetheart. So now I'm a dad, full-time student. Like, how do I navigate this part of my shift of identity? I find my real dad. I play collegiate sports really well, get a chance to play in the NFL. Now I'm a professional athlete. 3 years later, lose it. Now I'm not a professional athlete. Who in the hell is
So
Anthony?
that was an example of life shifting for you
Over,
with the
over,
shoulder industry
over.
that changes your trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, it all just, I think that's the big thing. If you get to the point of realizing that all these things happen, and they happen to you or for you, these things happen for my mindset a lot of years to me. And then after a while, I go, oh man, this is actually happening for me. And I mean, after the NFL, I opened this gym. It was like, I'm going to have this business, and it's up and down. I almost go bankrupt a few times. In doing so, neglect my family, neglect my wife. So I lose my wife, I lose my family, I lose my health. I get to a point where I literally was like, I can't physically handle this pain of so much loss. And I drove off. I was like, I can't do this. And thankfully nothing happened. I was, obviously I'm still here. And the reason that I do what I do now is it got to a point where I had this realization from someone, a good friend, talking to me about how I'd impacted their life just by living my life. And I had no issue or desire to help anybody else at this time in their life. But then like hearing what I'd gone through and the way that it in some way impacted that person, I was like, damn, I did this on accident. What if I did it on purpose? And so I kind of set out like saying, if I can give purpose to my life and my experiences through doing something great, I might be able to make some of this craziness. And then in 2014, my adoptive mom, she had contracted multiple sclerosis, like right around the year I was adopted. And in 2014, April 15th, actually, she had passed away. And I was in the room holding her hand. It's like she took her final breath. It was one of those moments of like, if this is life, like it's this finite, like I got to do something that lights me up. And it was this like thought in the back of my head of she had loved this kid who was super bad. I was bad back then, man. I was this crazy little kid. I have no idea why she kept me, but she loved me unconditionally, not blood, no relation, no need to. And I was like, man, if this woman can do this for someone, like what if I could do the same? And so it truly was this thought of like, how can I unconditionally love this world in a way that it didn't unconditionally love me in the beginning and give back? And so since 2014, it's been this drive and this grind to take what's in my head and share it in a way that not only is it just a story, but it's in fact, like I've got books upon books of psychology and identity work and structure and concepts. I make frameworks. I want to take what I have and make it something I can teach, not just talk about. Because a lot of people talk, and that's all great and well. Talking is good. You hear a story like, okay, cool, I'm inspired. I feel good for a day. But if I'm going to truly change your life like my mom changed mine, I have to teach you something you can apply actionably, which will allow you to shift your identity like I've done over my life. Because now at this point, my wife's back, my kids are back, my business is running well, I'm healthy, like I have a phenomenal life. And it's like what I call better life. I help people make that shift to build a better life. And the shift is your identity, which is comprised of your thoughts, beliefs, and actions. You get those dialed in specifically based on where you're supposed to go, you'll build that better life personally, professionally, and physically. So that's my world. That for me is my heart. I get up every day and just love what I get to do, which is loving on people.
Wow. If you're listening, if you could see Anthony's face, then you would know this is true. If you're watching on the video, then you know it. What was your mom's name?
Gina Renee Hart. When she passed away, I went to Maui, her favorite vacation place, and got her name tattooed on the inner right bicep. So I got that there.
So the ripple effect of her life is very clearly being realized. What a beautiful thing. If you wouldn't mind, would you go back to, because you kind of went on the low point. You know, so you lose the NFL, you lose the identity, you try some things, they don't work. And, you know, we all have these inner identities from our child. If you were beaten and starved and treated the way you were from 3 to 6, those are formative years. So your internal identity, once you have money, once you have status, once you have those things, is at conflict.
Always.
Right?
It's always a question of, do I deserve this? For a lot of years of my life, I never felt like I deserved any kind of praise. Like I'm not an ugly man, but I always, to this day, I feel weird when people are like, oh, you're cute, like you're good looking. It's like, I don't remember feeling that. And I don't know how to navigate. It took me years to learn how to say, I need some help, or thank you, or like these weird things that I never, as a kid growing up, had. So yeah, man, at that time in my life, you go back. So setting the stage, like for me, I've always in my life desired family, right? My family. And so growing up, I always wanted to have a kid. I always wanted, like I did, I was like, I want to give back to a life in a way it was never given to me. So I always had this desire of like, I want to be that guy, that positive, amazing dude. And so, you know, fast forward, I get, this point where I have my high school sweetheart. We have a son. We're still together. Get to a point where post NFL, we're great during the NFL. It was great. Then I come home and it's like, well, she wants me home now. And she's also has some things in her life going on. When you grow up and like you're together from 16 years on, you don't know much difference. So there's a curiosity that sets in, like who else could be out in the world? There's this desire to live through, like the party years. We had a kid during party years. So there's other circumstances. What ended up happening big time was I was at this gym that I was trying to redirect my identity and find myself and build this other statue of like, this is Anthony, right? So I was there from like 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day and was there building it, trying to grow it and making promises I wasn't keeping. Like, I'm going to make this, we're going to make this money. And next thing you know, '06, '06 hits when we bought this house. '08 hits when the market crashes. And I'm like, we're pretty much under the house and I'm not making money and I'm there for you. I'm grinding all day long with no money being made. And she's like, get a job. I'm like, I don't want to get a job. And, it's just like this ego that pops up. And so it gets to the point where I'm just not home. And she starts developing relationships with other people. And we go on a trip to Hawaii. I have no idea why I went to Hawaii. We actually got married in Hawaii. It's a different island. I remember like you can feel the distance. There's that saying that when there's smoke, there's fire. And I could feel distance. I didn't know what it was just yet. And I remember we were sitting in front of like a P.F. Chang somewhere. And I walk around behind her and she's texting somebody. And like, I'm like, who are you texting? And I'm like, she's like, nobody. And like, she puts the phone away. I'm like, that's odd. And then like, so I'm gonna go take out this place to go look at a tattoo possibly. In fact, I have tattoos on my side ribs, which took place at this time. And so I walk back around this corner and come back on the phone again, and like rip the phone away, and like she freaks out. And I'm like, what's going on? So I bolt, like I take off, and she leaves at the time, like our 4-year-old son at this PF Chang's and chases me for like a block and a half before I finally like I kind of stop and I'm reading this phone. Some guy had come over and said, hey, my wife, she's with your son. We saw you guys take off. And my wife finally goes back and I read it and she's texting another man who's talking about, I can't wait for you to get back so we can, yada, yada, yada. And like, this was the moment of me really feeling like my world fall apart because it's a reality, and now my family's gone. And now, like my wife's gone. I'm just sick inside. I mean, I have a weird connection to women when I'm with that woman. I had a single period. We actually got divorced. We're back together now, but, and it's a long story there. I'll tell you if you want to. But there's that window of like, I have this connection. And when I have that connection, because I didn't have it with my mother, like I always had this desire to really have an anchored, primary female relationship. And so it just tore me apart. I remember coming home and for like a few months, I was in a fog. Like usually when like stuff hits you like that, it's a complete fog. This is all shift. What do I do now? And me just avoiding it for a long time, which we all do. We try to find ways to distract ourselves. That's why sex comes into place and drugs come into place and movies and hobbies. And it takes us away from this. And so I'm in those moments and I remember I had to go to this gym, and at the gym I had to be happy, but I had no happy. So I was pulled from nowhere, smiling, laughing. So when I got in the car, I was more than drained. I had literally like I was nothing. And on top of that, like I felt like a loser because I, wasn't being a solid dad. I was getting out of shape. So I had like this little chubby belly because I was just wearing hooded sweatshirts all day to hide it. On top of that, like I'd already lost this football thing. So I'm watching people play the game I should be playing, but I'm hurt and I can't. And it got to me. I remember I was sitting at a UFC fight on a Saturday evening. And I went there with my buddies and we're all just sitting there. And like, I sat in one chair, I was told, for like 3 hours, didn't talk, didn't move, just sat there, just staring at the screen. And I got up when the fights ended. I kind of left. My best friend walks outside and we get in front of my car. It was a gray car. I don't know why this was my gray car at the time, just like a visually still in the moment. He walks outside, he says, hey, man, I know you got a lot going on. I know this is, you haven't let it settle. He says, but this is your reality, dude. You gotta wake up. And I remember like those few words, like I got in my car and like it hit me like they say, literally a ton of bricks. They say the brain can't differentiate between physical and emotional pain. Like it all hurts. And it was a moment where I had more emotional pain than I could physically handle. And I couldn't breathe. Like tears were just flowing. Like I was just in this immense pain. And I literally started the car, but I drove away and I sent a text that said to my best friends, actually, I think my wife, my mom, I said, please tell my children who their father was. And I shut the phone off and I just drove. And at this time of night, it was like 9-ish at night, I want to say. And I was legitimately looking for like a store that sold rat poison. I got in this back road, just drove. An hour later, I actually hadn't found a store that was open. So I parked my car at this gas station in a town called Stockton. And I'm just sitting there. And, I think I turned my phone back on and people are messaging me. And I don't even know what the messages were. I was just crying and I was like sad. And then the police show up. Apparently I had GPS on my phone and they could track the GPS, thankfully, and they found me at this gas station. So I played the whole like, oh, I don't know what's going on, I'm fine, like, that whole thing. And it was one of those things where I finally in these moments was like waking back up, like, dude, you talking about? You can't go. You got these kids, like you got these people that care about you. So I got in my car, I drove back home. I remember driving back to my house and pulling up to my house and seeing like 30 people outside in the middle of the night, like all figuring out where I was. And they called the ambulance because of those situations you can do. It's called 5150. And the ambulance asked me like, hey, do you want to go or not? And tip situations, like they wrangle you up, like they're strapping you down, they're throwing you in this paddy wagon, you're getting out. But for me, I was fine. But the thing was, I had this shame so much so that I didn't want to face these people. So I willingly was like, you know what, put me in. I'll get out of here. I can't do this right now. And it was in those moments where I really hit that bottom. And then my wife picked me up, took me home. Day to recover my brain and go back to work.
Hold on, man. Hold on, man. You cut out at your wife.
Oh, sorry.
Your wife picked you up and took you home. Can you just go
Yeah,
back to that?
of course. So my wife picked me up. She took me home. It was like a Saturday. And on Saturdays, obviously, the fights were on Saturday. It was like a Sunday morning. So I had like a day to get back to work, so to speak. So Monday, I show up back to work. And then one of my buddies who I played high school football with, who was working for me at the gym, he like kind of like, we wander in the back room. He says, hey, man, I want to let you know. He says, whenever you drove off and I thought like I was going to lose, he said, I actually physically threw up. I was sick. He said, I felt like I was losing a hero. And that was like the thing I referenced earlier is this moment. I was like, what are you talking about, dude? He's like, well, if you look at all the things you've gone through in your life, he's like, did you grow up? Everybody knows you grew up in foster. Everybody knows you went through this stuff. We know your family. It's like, we know what you did college and you're a solid present dad, when you're around, like you didn't leave your wife. Like you're here, you get this gym, you're providing jobs for us. It's like, dude, you're doing so many great things. And we look up to you and we look at you with inspiration to do what we do. And he says, I want you to realize that most people won't say it to you, but you're an incredible human. You're my hero. I was like, damn, like that. It really took me back because you don't hear that from your friends very often.
And also, you said earlier, like someone just tells you you're handsome and you can barely handle it because you don't think about yourself. Like to someone to honor who you be to your soul. Did you let that in?
No, I think at the moment I didn't, because it's an awkward thing to handle. Because they're talking about the guy who told me he's an alpha. He's a dude. He's not a dude that talks about emotions. So it's a lot weird moment, but one of those moments that gets your wheels spinning because everything gets like, why would he say that? How does that make sense? But if that's the case, someone who's this powerful guy, go do what you just did. Just all these weird thoughts. But that was like that literally was one of those pivotal moments where I'm sitting back thinking, man, like I'm more. And it was one of those times that I first kind of started like sharing my story, because before I didn't share a lot of it, but I started realizing that within what I'd experienced, there was something that was no longer for me to absorb, but for me to share. And I think, at this time, I'm also this football player. It's this alpha guy, right? Also, I got this ego, and people can't see you sweat. You're a former NFL linebacker. You can't let anybody see you sweat. And then in this moment, it's like, dude, because most men don't let things happen or don't share emotions. That's why we have, it's like a 6-time higher suicide rates, because no one shares. And you feel bottled up, and it's like, dude, like I finally had this freeing, like, let me let this out. And I think it's in those moments that you finally admit something's wrong, that you give yourself permission to fix things. And so that was the catalyst to who I am to this day. There's a lot of weird things in between there. But to who I am to this day is because of those moments of realizing that I know what the bottom looks like. So knowing what the bottom looks like, I can appreciate every part of the top so much more. I'm so happy for every day, literally. And on top of that, I grasped what true growth means, or having an identity shift means, because I had to shift from that moment into this. And that was a long journey. It wasn't a fast one. It wasn't like I woke up like, all right, I'm great. Like it's a draw and it's a drag, and the actions change and your belief systems completely have to change, but they won't change until your actions change to make yourself believe that you're capable of this, or you are that thing. And so a lot that goes into it. And so the psychology behind it is what I want to figure out. Like, I've always been a curious individual. Like, how do I work? How do I tick? That's why my degrees in kinesiology. Like, I wanted to like be around sports, but then find out like, how does this in my body when I use these weights and do this stuff, right? So then I just transfer that to like, how does the psychology of my brain work? How am I thinking? Because this thing that we have in our head, it just does stuff, right? It named itself, it thinks, but we never actionably take control of the thought processes in ways that we truly can. But when you can, it changes your emotions, it changes your thoughts, which change your actions, which change your outcomes, which change your story of your life, which then re-anchors you to who you happen to be right now.
Thank you for sharing that story so raw and so honestly, because, identity shift is pithy, it's innovative, and it's sexy on a meme. Like it works.
Yeah.
But to hear the reality, the humanity behind it makes it accessible for me, to say, oh, I can do that. Because identity shift for an American Ninja Warrior is one thing, but for me, just a regular old human being, can I really do that? And that tells, that you've had the same experiences that I've had, that so many other people have. It really makes it so what you're teaching people is substantive. It's grounded in the realities of living a life as a man on earth, right? So I'm really appreciative of you giving the background to that.
Yeah, very welcome.
So part of identity shift, I think, is, you say see, sacrifice, sustain.
Yeah.
Another pithy thing, but to me, when I read it, it's very substantive and pointed. Can you tell me something about that?
Yeah, so there's I always work in frameworks. Like, I'm a football guy. I like playbooks, right? Like structure. All humans, for the most part, we like structure, but you can have structure that gives you creativity within it, right? Structure is like, I got this picture frame, but I'm gonna paint craziness inside of it. Still a structure, right? So the way I look at it is there's 3 stages we go through to actually have a shift. You actually look at it, what's called my shift schematic. It's the 3 processes I use to actually outline someone's true shift, right? And it's not just all in your head. The first thing is
that's
seeing.
on your website, right? So I can put a link to that. Perfect.
Yeah, it's on the website. So seeing is like that first stage we start with. It's awareness. It's being clear what you want, the direction you want to go. But really, it's 2 things. It's seeing why you're here. What have you done? What's your problems? What's your faults? Like, for me, seeing back in that moment in time, one of the things that helped me fix my marriage was realizing that at a lot of the years, I thought it was all her fault. It's all your fault, which makes me feel helpless. When you feel helpless, you won't give effort to something again. Therefore, I'm never lovable because I have no control, right? When the reality is part of my interactions with my wife got her to a point where she felt she had to make a choice. She made the wrong choice, but she didn't get to that choice point by herself. So my seeing allowed me to say, man, as much as I don't want to accept this, but I was part of my pain, it gave me back a little bit of power because I realized I had a small control. So I had to see how I got to this place I was at, right? Then the second part of seeing is, what can you go towards? Like, what are your opportunities in life? Most people don't see big enough. We call them dreams, but most people don't see big enough or see past a certain roadblock because they have no one that's been there, and they've never been there, so they don't know what it looks like. So why would I want that, right? I'd have no grasping to see what that could be. So the second part of it is like seeing, what in the heck can you go after, man? Like, what is out there for the world and woman for me to attain? And so once you have the seeing in place, like, all right, cool, I want that. And I know why I got here, so I'm gonna get in my own way. Now it's like, what am I gonna sacrifice to get there? And sacrifice literally is the root word, because if you had this thing already that you want, you wouldn't have to worry about the pain of adjusting or shifting to get it. It'd be easy. But there's literally, the word sacrifice comes with a knowing of, like, there's gonna be pain. So the problem is, most people will sacrifice the things they want to, or the things that they shouldn't, right? They'll sacrifice, like, I'm going to spend a little bit of money as a sacrifice, or, I'm going to sacrifice my health and dig into this. I sacrificed my marriage. I neglected everything to build this business that didn't really get off the ground, right? So I was sacrificing in the wrong areas, and they won't sacrifice the areas that they should, which is, I should sacrifice my ego. I should not think I'm the biggest king in the world, right? The negative ego, we'll call it, because there is a part of ego that's actually great. But I won't sacrifice the negative ego. This is who I am. You can't tell me anything. I'm gonna put this wall up. This is me, right? And that ego, you don't sacrifice that thing, man. It's gonna get in your way. I call it everyone's greatest obstacle. It's always a problem. And then on the flip side, you also have the things that they don't sacrifice, which is the comfort zones, which is really where everything happens. We talk about get out of your comfort zone. People have no idea what it looks like. But the thing is, when they're in
slow down, because you're real quick here. So everybody says you have to get out of your comfort zone, but when you said you need to sacrifice your comfort zone, for me that was a much more visceral reality of what it is.
Yeah, you got to throw it out there and get rid of it. Because the thing is the comfort zone. We as human beings have what's called homeostasis, a level of where we feel comfort. If you're a person that does well with crazy, you like crazy. You actually attune your life to getting in situations that are crazy because your brain likes it. You actually get that serotonin, that dopamine dump, that norepinephrine. Like, it makes you feel great. Those who like it calm, when it gets crazy, they go back to calm. They shut down. They walk away. They go back to calm. Those, when it's crazy, it gets calm. They fix things that go back to crazy. And so when we have this homeostasis, that's our comfort zone. And people think it's the same for everybody. It's never the same, honestly. So when I say sacrifice it, it means The reason you are where you are right now and don't have what you want is because you are in that comfort zone, either high or low, but it's not at the tuned level of what it needs to be for what you keep dreaming about every day. And when you can realize that you only reach the comfort zone when you've put effort towards a direction and hit this wall of what I call identity walls. That's not me. This doesn't feel good. I don't want to do this. So we find ways to procrastinate. And it doesn't look ugly all the time. We find ways to procrastinate, to make excuses, to postpone, to find a whole new direction. And like, oh, I didn't like that. I'm going to do this now. And if you don't sacrifice the comfort zone, what happens is you get to that wall and it always becomes a wall that's impermeable. Those who can sacrifice a comfort zone build a door in the wall. The wall's still there and it sucks, but you can build a door in it and walk through it and realize, oh, on the other side of this, it's actually something I really wanted to get, but most people won't build the door. They just sit there at the wall and go find another wall. And so the comfort zone really is just, it's not a thing. It's a moment in time that you feel inside and you're like, this sucks. I don't want to do this. And you go put on Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm. And I'm here to tell you that you can go and do this and watch Game of Thrones.
Hell yes, you can. I did.
How disappointing the end is.
Oh, geez.
Well, this is brilliant, and really, you gave such a good roadmap for people, like instructions to follow. Because I'm a chaos guy, right?
Yeah.
So for me, getting out of my comfort zone is finding the even, is finding the discipline, is finding the calm.
Yeah.
And I live most of the time out of that, which is really ironic. People will describe me as a very grounded person, a very present person, but that's not my comfort zone. But now it's my state, but I sacrifice. Excuse me?
You did the last part. You sustained it. That's the last part of it. That's actually what you've done.
So now we're talking about sustainability, because I don't think that the nervous system, I don't think that it's almost like smoking. Even if you quit for 30 years, you're still have a little thing. So that old pattern, that's, like the 3 to 6 year old that you had, and me being molested as a kid, and all this stuff, like those things still have the shadow there. And if we soak them up, they'll come. But if we, learn how to really cultivate this, what you called the sacrifice in the new state. Anything else you want to say about sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it. So sustainability really, it's you have to create something stronger than what your addiction might be. And addiction, everybody thinks it's a bad thing, and it's, there's always this crazy thing. Really, addiction is like, what does your brain already automatically tune to that you will tune everything else out for? For my kids, it's video games. Legitimate, there's an addiction, right? For me, I love music, or I love creating stuff with my hands. Like, I'll think about that when I shouldn't be. Like, I just want to create stuff and listen. Like, it's just weird. In my work, I'm addicted to the work I do. Genuinely, my wife is like, she has to force me to tune it out. And so what I've created stronger than my work is my relationship with my wife and my kids, so that can tune me away. And so sustainability is saying, if I have this thing going on, there's 3 levels: help, health, and heart. So the help thing is, once I get to this level of realizing I got to sustain this, I'm going to continue to need help. Most people do it alone. Alone doesn't really work most of the time, unless you're incredibly strong, which very few people are. So there's always going to be a need for help. And then you have to look at my health, like physically, am I good? Mentally, am I good? And keep checking in, because you're fighting a battle while sustaining this, because it's always hard to stay this course when you want to go over here. So you got to make sure your mental health's good, because if it's not, like you're not talking to people, expressing, sharing emotion, you just get dialed in, and you're by yourself. You get like really lonely, and it's detrimental to actually your nervous system, your feelings, your emotions. And then the last part is your heart. Like, check in. Is the direction I'm going keeping me happy? Am I passionate here? If not, leave it, right? But here's how the sustainability, what's so great about it, and how it actually helps you create that bigger thing. We as humans have what's called investment bias, right? The more we've invested in something, the more bias we have to get a return from it. So if I put a bunch of money in, I want my money back, right? If I've been in this relationship for a while, I want to make it work. If I've had this car for 30 years, it costs more to me, right? It's more sentimental value. So because of the time invested, we create this ownership. And so what that looks like in the aspect of making an identity shift, when I talk about the beliefs, thoughts, and actions, beliefs and thoughts lead the actions, but the actions, what I call micro actions, done over time, they're your investments into your future identity. The more you've done this thing, sustain this path, and become that, which is actions, you can't get up and say, I don't want to return from that. There has to be a return. The return is how you show up every day. It doesn't mean that this thing is gone, and that part of your brain that wants that actual chemical pathway for pleasure in there is gone. It just means that I've built something that's a little bit stronger. And so for me and for you, it's like, yes, the micro action, the time spent there says, hey, this is part of who I am now. that part still exists, but I've developed this investment here so great that I have to give a return for it with how I see myself, how I operate every single day in this new identity.
Brilliant, brilliant, and doable. Like that,
Very.
you have a gift for explaining things so that they're understandable, and
Yeah.
I appreciate that about you.
Very welcome, man.
So I'm going to outline this in the show notes so people can actually have a cheat sheet and then go to your
Go
website
do it.
and learn more about it.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing all of that.
Very welcome, man.
What's your next cool project that you want to promote here?
Me, I don't know if it's a promotion thing. So the way that Anthony operates, I speak and I coach and I do programs. I'm actually in the process of writing a book, but it's not, I've still got to get it literally accepted by the publishing company. So we're working on that. But the thing for me, I guess promotion, I don't know. So this is where I go back to my faith base of Anthony, right? My faith base of Anthony is I'm supposed to be where I'm supposed to be right now. And as long as I do what I'm doing and I'm happy, like I have a good level of peace. Like I think the goal for me, and I think for everybody, but nobody talks about it. I want a bunch of money and I want all this nice. You just want peace of mind. Maybe you want to experience your peace on a beach. That's totally cool. But for me, like I want my peace of mind. So the projects that I work on, it gives me peace every day and I enjoy the place I'm at. And so if it's talking about promotion, it's like any individual who's in their head thinking, man, either I'm in the middle of a transition or I want to start a transition to a new place or whatever it is, that transition, it has to be accompanied by an identity shift. And you may naturally do without knowing it, but if you go that course, it's like leaving your house trying to say, I'm going to go to grandma's house without a map. Like you can eventually maybe get there if you keep calling directions, but like I create that map. It's like, just do this. You'll save gas, get there quicker. You get to experience that end result much faster because we're going to have to navigate this internal identity of who we are to shift to that place. And I just outline that. So my work I do is going through the actual step-by-step structured frameworks I have and just teaching people how to do it and then guiding them, like really saying, here, do this, don't do that, stay this course, develop this, and then execute. And what it all boils down to is micro actions. All the work gets like dripped down to one concentrated drop of, on Monday, do this at 1 o'clock. Like it's that, and then keep doing that. And then you can infuse different actions based on the identity you want to create. We do something called the section of identities. But anyways, it's like boiling down to who you want to be, micro actions, take the step. So promotion, if that sounds like something cool, come check me out, man. Go to anthonytrucks.com or find me on Instagram. But that's also at Anthony Trucks. I like one of two people in the world with that name. So it's pretty simple. But if that's something that tickles your fancy, you're like, man, I really am wanting to figure out how to navigate this transition. I apply it to business. I have entrepreneurs that I use this exact structure with very, very succinctly because what it boils down to is simply your actions, whether it's the actions of building a great business, action of building a great marriage, a great body, it's all the same.
Wow, that's brilliant. So yes, go to anthonytrucks.com where you'll see some really good videos and get some of the really good wisdom that Anthony shares there. Thank you again for spending time with me. I think the listeners are going to get a ton out of this conversation.
I hope so, man. That's always my goal.
Yeah. To everybody else, thank you for giving me your most precious commodity, which is your time and your attention. I love you and have a great rest of the day.